We all know that electric cars will save the world, right? Well, not so fast. The electric car industry is worth $170 billion today, and it'll grow to almost $1 trillion a year by 2030. It's an industry that claims to be driven by good intentions, but underneath, it's powered by greed, lies, and deception. And while Elon Musk is praised as a savior to the environmental movement, in reality, his industry has blood on its hands because it knowingly supports environmental destruction, as well as child labor and economic slavery. But these facts are often hidden or pushed to the side so that makers of electric cars can continue to make an insane amount of money. Basically, the idea that electric cars are zero emission or even good for the environment is a whole lot of bullshit. Before I get into the really nasty stuff later on in this video, I'm just going to start you off with a small appetizer to show you the destructive nature of this electric car business. This is the new Hummer, and unlike the old gas-guzzling model of the past, loved by Arnold Schwarzenegger, this one is electric. General Motors is heavily promoting the new Hummer as a zero-emission car, but that claim isn't just misleading, it's actually a big fat lie. There may be no exhaust coming from the back of the new Hummer, but the electricity that drives it definitely creates pollution, as most of the energy generated in the US still comes from burning fossil fuels. According to one study, driving the 9,000-pound electric Hummer just 1 mile puts out 341 grams of CO2, which is significantly more than basically every single petrol or diesel-powered sedan sold on the market today, even more than this heavy diesel-powered V8 Audi SUV. Now, of course, this is just one example, and considering the electric Humvee is the biggest and heaviest electric car on the road, it wouldn't be fair to just leave it at that. So let me be impartial and look at the problems of the electric cars in general. How environmentally friendly an electric car is to run all depends on where its power comes from. In Iceland, for example, electric cars make a lot of sense, as the nation's entire power supply is renewable geothermal energy. But this isn't the case in Poland, where almost all energy comes from burning coal, meaning driving an electric car in Poland is about 10% worse than a petrol or diesel equivalent. On average, though, it is better to drive an electric car on a daily basis in most of the West, even if the energy that powers these cars might not be very clean. But here's the thing, in most cases, electric cars are better for the environment to drive on a daily basis, but compared to gas-powered cars, they are much worse in many other ways. Electric cars are very energy intensive to build, mostly due to the resources needed to produce their battery packs. Because of this, electric cars are much more damaging to produce than their gas-powered ancestors. On average, an electric car needs to be driven around 60,000 kilometers before its lifetime emissions make it cleaner than a car that runs on fossil fuels. And there's also the problem of waste these cars produce. Whereas almost every part of a gas-powered car can be scrapped or recycled, this isn't the case with electric car battery packs, which are not designed to be reused, and according to most manufacturers, need to be replaced every 100,000 miles. Ideas are being theorized on how to possibly reuse these batteries in the future, but for now, the millions of electric car battery packs being retired each year will just create tons of new toxic electronic waste. So obviously, electric cars are very far from being zero emissions or harmless to the environment. But if this is the case, why is it that they're allowed to be advertised as causing no harm to the environment? In 2010, President Obama implemented rules stating electric cars couldn't be advertised as zero-emission vehicles, quite simply because it would basically be false advertising. However, under President Trump, many of Obama's fuel efficiency and emissions rules were overturned, meaning electric car makers could now go back to using zero-emission wording, something the current president, Joe Biden, has seen fit to leave exactly the way it is. In the rest of the world, this story is basically the same, especially in the EU, which has pledged to ban the sale of fossil fuel burning cars by 2035. And even though electric cars are far from being zero emission in the EU either, the EU's definition of a zero emission car ignores the carbon cost of producing them or the CO2 created from the energy that powers them, creating a convenient legal loophole that misdirects people from the true environmental cost of electric cars. So basically, electric cars are allowed to be called zero emission because our governments allow that to be the case, even though it's clearly very far from the truth. So do you think this is a whole load of greenwashing to help people buy more electric cars? Let me know your thoughts down below. In a second, I'll share with you what I think is the most terrible thing about the production of electric cars in general. But before I do, just want to let you know that we have an amazing newsletter that 70,000 people adore. Little golden nuggets of financial wisdom written up in beautifully written stories. There's a link down below to sign up. Now let's talk about probably the worst cost of electric car production, and it's a price paid by suffering and death of human beings. Electric cars need a lot of rare minerals to produce them, and one of the most essential minerals required for the production is cobalt. 70% of the world's production of cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, which, amongst other things, is also the 10th poorest nation on Earth, meaning the people who live there are regularly exploited by foreign companies who need their nation's resources. A lot of the DRC's cobalt is mined in massive industrial mines like this one. However, over 250,000 Congolese work in dangerous, unregulated mines like this. These mines are called informal mines, but this name doesn't sound that great in marketing material, so the media and companies involved in trading this type of cobalt tend to call them artisanal mines. Artisanal mines might have a lovely sounding name, but life working in them is horrific. Children as young as 6 years old are sent to them to mine cobalt to help provide income for their families. Many of these children will die in the process, either by being killed in tunnel collapses or because of deadly cobalt poisoning. Adults involved in cobalt mining also suffer terribly themselves, with exposure to toxic cobalt mining being linked to a myriad of diseases, as well as causing birth defects in children born to adults who work in the mines. And apart from these human costs, extracting cobalt causes significant environmental damage as well, with the cobalt mining region of Katanga in DRC being named one of the 10 most polluted places on Earth. Once again, raising more questions about the environmental impact of electric cars as a whole. Now, the consequences of these informal cobalt mines that I've just mentioned above are pretty horrific, so there's absolutely no way that electric car manufacturers would knowingly be getting their cobalt from these sources, right? Previously, electric car manufacturers have been accused of sourcing some of the cobalt from these informal mines, but due to backlash, many have promised to clean up their supply chain. Enter a company called Glencore, which is the largest cobalt miner on the planet. Amongst others, Glencore supplies cobalt to Tesla and General Motors, and previously was heavily against the use of informal cobalt mining. But in 2020, Glencore made a U-turn, adding informal cobalt back into its supply chain, most likely because it was impossible to meet global electric car demand via industrial mines alone. Glencore has since tried to use public relations to make its informal mining sound good, saying they're committed to transforming it into a fair and responsible industry. But for now, these words are pretty meaningless, as informal cobalt mining is still deadly and preys on vulnerable workers. And even in large industrial mines, Congolese workers aren't treated much better. For example, Chinese company TFM supplies Mercedes, Tesla, Volvo, and VW with cobalt, and TFM workers have accused the company of significant misconduct, including forcing them into uncontracted labor as well as racist, colonialist exploitation. So in reality, it seems like electric car manufacturers are using Glencore and other miners to be the middlemen to do their dirty work so that they don't have to be seen as getting blood from informal cobalt mining on their hands. But anyway, there seems to be a whole lot of really scummy things happening in the electric car industry. So in conclusion, what can we take away from this entire video? Electric car makers want you to believe that buying their products will help save the world, but in reality, it seems like that's far from the truth. If you really want to lower your transportation impact on the planet, you don't necessarily need to buy an electric car. Instead, you could focus more on biking, walking, or taking public transport, or maybe taking a few less flights per year. And as studies have shown, it's usually better to keep your old gas car a few years longer instead of trading it in for new electric. However, in the near future, as our technology improves, the negative impacts of producing electric cars will likely diminish significantly, possibly making electric cars a much greener alternative very soon. But at least to me, it's obvious that the time is not right now. Look, I know that our world needs to get away from our dependence on fossil fuels, and I am not saying that there aren't going to be any teething problems as we are exploring better solutions. But do I think that electric cars are the solution that our world needs right now? Personally, I just don't know. But I do know this, that if you want to buy a Tesla because you think it's cool or it's thrilling to drive, by all means, go right ahead. But just don't buy into the lie that it is zero emissions or somehow really good for the planet. But I do know what electric cars are really good for right now, and that is using the hype of the green revolution in order to make electric car manufacturers and its shareholders very, very rich. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you're also going to enjoy the video we recently made about the plastic manufacturing industry that has been manipulating the public for decades about recycling so that they can make more money. The video is on your screen right now. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy it, also consider subscribing and sharing this video so more people know about it. Also, we have that epic newsletter, 70,000 people. You don't want to miss out. And finally, we have a private membership where you can learn more about finance and freedom. Link down below. And I will see you in the next one.